Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Wednesday, April 28th, 2021. On today's episode of the show, we're going to be gathering around the virtual water cooler to talk about what we've been up to. My name is Ben Pearson. I'm the senior writer at slashfilm.com, and I'm joined on today's episode by Slash Film managing editor Jacob Hall,
Hello, hello.
weekend editor Brad Oman,
Hey, that's me.
and writers Hoai-Tran
Hey, everyone.
and Chris Evangelista.
Hi.
All right, let's dive right into what we've been doing. Brad, it seems like you've been having some fun recently. Tell me about it.
Indeed. So after getting my second shot and then waiting a couple weeks, I'm fully vaccinated, and so are some friends. And one of my buddies who I'd been playing video games with throughout the pandemic, along with some of our other friends who live nearby, we planned a LAN party, basically, where we all got together at my friend's house and set up a bunch of TVs and computer monitors with all of our systems and just played a bunch of video games and screwed around all weekend. Everything from Call of Duty to Super Smash Brothers on the Switch, some of the Jackbox party games that are really fun to play if you haven't played any of those. And it was just nice. It was a weekend that felt about as normal as it can be as we start to come back. It really felt good to get together with people in person again and just hang out and goof around. It was just generally a good time, and it gets me excited just for everything to kind of get back to normal, and hopefully more gatherings like this will be in the near future.
So you said LAN party, just in case people don't know what that is. LAN stands for local area network. And as Brad mentioned, it's basically when you just like hardwire a bunch of systems together and play stuff. So Brad, did you have like one particular game that stood out to you that you enjoyed more than the others? Or was it more just like the experience than, any specific game?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the experience. I like the Jackbox party games because there's such spontaneity to it, because it involves a lot of just in the moment interaction and coming up with funny answers, and it makes for a lot of hearty laughs. Like we were, there's a lot of times when we were just crying laughing, playing these games. So it really is just more so about the overall experience. And I hadn't done anything like this, not in person. I obviously have played video games online, with multiple friends occasionally. But like the last time that we had systems that were all like kind of hooked up together was like when I was in a dorm in my freshman year of college when Halo 2 came out. So it was just cool to get back and do something like this.
Oh yes, I remember those days well. Well, today is actually the 2 week mark from when I got my second dose, so I'm like officially immunized, I guess, or whatever the term is. So I'm looking forward to
Inoculated.
Inoculated. There you go. I look forward to like having dinner with my parents inside instead of having to eat on porches and stuff like that at a distance. So that's basically what I've been doing, which is not much of anything. But Jacob, it seems like you've been keeping very busy recently.
I'm planning a game of Twilight Imperium, which is one of the best board games ever designed, but it's also a game that typically takes 10 to 12 hours to play, especially when you play with 8 players like I have been. And this weekend marks a point where almost everybody in my gaming group, my regulars, are all 2 weeks past vaccination, their final shots, and we decided this is the time to do it. So I've been planning for a month. We've been orchestrating this, and it's been me sending out the rule book and tutorials and video stuff online so you can be prepared. It's essentially a space opera war game where everybody plays an alien race and you essentially fight for control of the galaxy. It's not like Risk though, and that's just lots of random dice rolling and simple tactics. It's the kind of game that also simulates trade and negotiation and politics, and there are 1,000 moving pieces on it. And it's the kind of game where you play it and you love and hate everybody in the room with you, because there's so much backstabbing, so much alliance making. It is such a great time, and it's the kind of game that really, for me, symbolizes what tabletop gaming is, which is everybody comes together and you have to be in the same room. You meet each other's eyes and you just laugh and scream and yell and argue, and it's the ultimate social experience. And I'm looking forward to being in a room with 7 people for 12 hours playing war. It's been over a year since I've had a major board game day like this, and I've spent literally 4 weeks building up a text message with all my friends, making sure everybody's locked in. And I'll report back next week about how it went. But I'm just excited I'm so excited to be able to actually plan social things again now that, things aren't behind us, but having responsible vaccinated friends really means I return to my social life.
Yeah. Jacob, I'm curious about your board game nights with the, you've talked about teaming up with this group many times on this podcast before, and how you've sort of been orchestrating a long D&D campaign. Is this something where you guys only play like one game per day, per session, per meetup, or is it like, you play Twilight Imperium for a little while, you shift over to the D&D campaign for a little while? How does that work?
The D&D campaign is its own thing. It's a whole. I've been playing the same game for many years, but it's also um, has some overlap with my game group, but it's very much its own thing. Whereas the board game stuff is, uh, it depends on the session. It depends on like, who's going to be there. Do we plan to be there for 2 hours, or do we plan to be there for 12 hours? And it becomes a question of, okay, I have a large enough game library of hundreds of board games that I can look who's going to be there and say, okay, I know so and so likes this type of game, but so and so doesn't like this type of game. I can build what I bring based on that. And sometimes we'll make board game days built around one single game where everybody knows this is for me or it's not. Or I bring, a whole bunch of 15-minute games. We play a bunch of little things. It's really about reading the room. I think that being a good board game day organizer is about understanding the tastes of your friends and curating a buffet essentially of here's what I'm bringing. What do you want to play? And sometimes that means one big game or 6 little games. And in the case of this game, I cannot imagine anybody wanting to do anything else other than sleep after this game.
Okay. Well, nobody's been reading anything, so let's get into what we've been watching. Jacob and Chris have watched Mortal Kombat. Chris, tell me what you thought about this new movie that's on HBO Max right now.
It's bad. It's not a good movie.
Oh no.
I seem to be in the minority on this, although Jacob agrees with me, and I'll let him talk in a moment. But I have no problem with dumb movies. I'm a sucker for dumb movies. I'm a sucker for movies where monster people punch each other. I'm the target audience for this movie, and I went into it really excited. I thought the trailer looked cool, but it's just a complete bust. The fights aren't even that impressive, which seems like, the first thing they should have got right. And the second thing that really bugs me is this film does what so many recent reboots and adaptations of, popular IP do, in that it's all set up. It's like a prequel movie, and Hollywood keeps doing this and they're not stopping. Like, I think like the upcoming Uncharted movie is a prequel movie where it's like, this is how they became whatever. I don't know what Uncharted's about. This is how they became Uncharted. But
Ray
it's like,
Uncharted.
Yeah, but it's like, stop it. No one gives a shit about how they became the things they are. Just show us, it's that Patton Oswalt joke where, I don't care how the thing, I forget what the joke is, but where he's about the Star Wars prequels, where it's like, I don't care where the things I love came from. I just love the things I love. And it's like, I don't need a movie that explains where Mortal Kombat comes from. Just give me the Mortal Kombat. Like, they don't even get to the tournament, which is like, the thing that a lot of the games is about, the big fighting tournament. This whole movie is all fucking set up. And at the end, it's like, wink, wink. What you really wanted? We'll give you that in the sequel. And it's like, well, what if they never make the sequel? Just get the first movie right. I know everyone wants franchises and sequels and so on, and that's fine. But please, for the love of God, get the first fucking movie right. And then we can talk about sequels. It's infuriating. Anyway, Jacob, what did you think?
Yeah, this is a very bad movie. And I don't want to make this about people who liked it, because if you liked it, that's fine. It's just that I feel like so much of the reaction to it was, what did you expect? It's silly, it's dumb, it's Mortal Kombat. And to which I respond, I've played a lot of Mortal Kombat games, and especially ones in recent years, have much better stories and significantly better character work than this, which is saying a lot considering how these games started off just, a mishmash of things. They've really grown their mythology in their character roster into something that is really silly, but also really fun. And maybe not complex, but interesting at least. It's this blend of fantasy, martial arts, and horror that really works. And the Mortal Kombat world has gotten so much fun in addition to being, a fun video game. I felt compelled to write about this. I wrote 2,000 words breaking down why I think Mortal Kombat is a bad movie. And you can find that on /film.com. but it's not that it's just boringly staged and looks cheap and takes place in like 3 locations. And the fact that they have like the fights really aren't staged well. It's the fact that it really does not understand the appeal of Mortal Kombat. It's I'm gonna get into the weeds here, and I apologize, but it's like one of the big reveals in the movie is that everybody who has to fight for Mortal Kombat is destined to do it. They have a strange birthmark shaped like the Mortal Kombat logo, and if you have that birthmark, you have access to a magical power if you unlock through training. And I guess for me, the entire appeal of Mortal Kombat has always been, hey, look, here's an undead ninja and an ice wizard and a military commando and a warrior monk and a movie star who have all come to this fighting tournament for their own purposes, their own reasons. They have their own backgrounds. They're all trained in different ways, and they have no reason to be in the same room together whatsoever. But here they are, all fighting in a mystical tournament that changes the fate of the world. And rather than let that be its own cool thing, these people from different backgrounds, completely different fighting styles. Hey, look, the cyborg's going to fight the wizard. Isn't that cool? That's very cool. Whereas this movie is content to say, well, they're all the same, really. They all have the same powers. They all come from the same place. They're all chosen ones by destiny. And, they're fated to be here, as opposed to characters who have made their own choices and are here because they're their own people. What a way to reduce that game's universe. What a way to take everything that's so cool about that cast and like homogenize them so they're all the same goddamn thing. Beyond just being a boringly staged movie that is not interesting and is built around a tournament that they always talk about but never get to. I mean, what a way to betray the games. What a way to not understand the appeal of these characters. I hate it. I hate it a lot.
Yeah, listening, I have not seen Mortal Kombat yet, but listening to this, it reminds me of like the one of the fatal flaws of the Amazing Spider-Man series, where it like turns Peter Parker into, this destined figure instead of just, a random guy who happened to get bit by this spider. There's like, all this like the one mythology that's
can we please stop having chosen one movies? I know it's like an ancient form of storytelling and so on, but I would love for like a year where I don't see a single fucking Hollywood movie where there's at least a chosen one character. It's like, give it a fucking rest. Oh my God. All right.
All right. Well, I'm going to link to your piece, Jacob, in the show notes here. So if anybody has seen Mortal Kombat and is curious about, Jacob's deep dive thoughts on that, I encourage you to check out that link. So
one question real quick. Does anybody yell Mortal Kombat?
No.
Wow. Okay.
And they even
what a waste.
They even redo the song, the iconic song, and they don't put the guy yelling Mortal Kombat in the song. It's like what are you doing? That's the coolest part. We want to hear the guy yell Mortal Kombat. I hate it.
There also, it's like a checklist thing, a corporate checklist of here's Mortal Kombat things we can insert there. Like one character kills somebody else and just says fatality, which is funny in theory, but it feels like a checklist as opposed to like being funny or interesting within the scene, or like somebody, like a character yells finish him, but it's not in the context you want to be. It's in the middle of a chaotic scene, instead of being like, I don't know. I think back to the Paul W.S. Anderson movie, which used the character to say finish him or fatality in ways that like feel really fun and natural for a movie that's as silly as that. And I don't think Mortal Kombat 95 is great, but it's better than this one. Or this one just feels like, okay, we have this checklist. Someone's gonna say fatality. Someone's gotta do this. Someone's gotta do that. Scorpion's gotta speak in Japanese the entire time, except when he says "get over here," because that's in line people know. It's bullshit. I hate it.
Boy. Well, that seems like a huge missed opportunity and a big bummer. Also, Jacob, I think you said Paul Thomas Anderson instead of Paul W.S. Anderson.
Paul W.S. Anderson. But I would love to see Paul Thomas Anderson's Mortal Kombat.
Oh,
I wonder if somebody's done that on YouTube. If somebody's done like a sort of a fake in the style of type of fan video, I would love to see something like that. All right, so let's go to what I've been watching. Jacob, you spent some time talking with the director of a new show on Hulu called Sasquatch. And after listening to your interview with that director and hearing you talk about the show, my wife and I watched this series last Saturday. It's 3 episodes on Hulu right now. And we tore through this entire thing in one afternoon because we were just like, give me more of this. Like it is great. I love it so much. It is yeah, everything that I love about true crime sort of mystery storytelling. It is, it, man, it has like a. I hesitate to go too far into it because Jacob, you've done such a good job talking about it already. But just the very, very basic layout of the show is that it's about this journalist who worked on a weed farm in Northern California many, many years ago in 1993 and heard this story about a Bigfoot that supposedly murdered 3 people, nearby. And now, all these years later, this journalist tries to figure out what the truth is behind that story and solve that triple homicide. And it is just a fascinating collision of this sort of like weird mythology and the unsettling nature of being alone in the woods and the drug culture, the cannabis culture of Northern California, and why that particular part of the planet is like ideal for growing, and the dangers that can sort of pop up around that, and how the government tried to get involved, and how these people, some people are just trying to make a living while others are more of a danger to the community around them. I mean, it's all of this kind of like deep dive stuff based on just like whispers and rumors, and this person really just trying to brush all of the nonsense aside and get to the core of the truth of what actually happened here. And it's just completely engrossing and totally fascinating. And only 3 episodes, which is great. I think the entire series runs something like just over 2 hours, so it's not a huge commitment, but it is like, this is we often on this podcast talk about how true crime shows outlive their welcome. They stretch out to 6 or 8 episodes when they definitely could have tightened things up a lot. And this is like one of the perfect examples of a show that knows how to get in, get out, and tell its story efficiently and effectively. And it's very, very good. It's called Sasquatch. It's on Hulu right now, so I would encourage anybody to check that out if they're interested in true crime stuff and Bigfoot. I also watched California Split. Has anybody else here seen this movie? Do you guys know California Split at all? Okay, nobody. It's
shaming us all, Ben. Shaming us all.
Well, I'd never seen it either. It's directed by Robert Altman. It came out in 1974, and it is a gambling movie starring Elliot Gould and George Segal, or Segal, Segal. I've seen this person in many things, but
it's pronounced Steven Seagal.
You're right. I'm mispronouncing the first name. Man, Elliot Gould and Steven Seagal. What a pairing that would be. But basically, this movie is it's a very shaggy movie about these 2 gamblers, these guys who are just addicted to playing poker and just gambling on pretty much any game they can get their hands on. Just sort of like bumming around Southern California. They go to Reno at one point, and it's a very loose, like I said, sort of shaggy movie. But it is Vulture at one point called it the greatest film about gambling ever made, and it is a very, very good gambling movie. It's also a great sort of buddy movie. These 2 guys, Gould in particular, is just like magnetic in this movie. He is unreal to watch, and it also serves as in the same way that like people say that The Rock is sort of a sequel, like a quasi sequel to the James Bond movies, or Enemy of the State is sort of a quasi sequel to The Conversation. I sort of feel like the Ocean's 11 or the Ocean's trilogy could be sort of a quasi sequel to California Split, because it's Elliot Gould just gambling and being this sort of like terrible drunken gambler who just loses all of his money at all times and is like addicted to the high of being around the tables. And then you could theoretically pick up all those years later with him sort of getting involved with Danny Ocean's crew. So if you watch it, with through that lens, it sort of adds a humorous little extra note to things. But I enjoyed this movie a lot. So and reading about the ending, the planned ending that they have, I'm not going to give away what actually happens at the end of this movie, but I encourage you, if you do watch this, read up a little bit about what they were planning to do with the ending, because it is very different, and I would argue way, way worse than what they actually settled on. So it's called California Split. It is streaming on the Criterion channel right now. And then I also watched a movie called The Lady Eve, which is also streaming on the Criterion channel. This one stars Barbara Stanwyck and Henry Fonda. It's directed by Preston Sturgis. It came out in 1941. Has anybody here seen this one? You guys know The Lady Eve at all? This feels like an HT movie.
I might have seen this. I don't think no, actually I haven't. I've heard of it. I don't
Yeah,
think I've seen it though.
it's I wouldn't say it's like a full blown classic in my eyes anyway, but man, Barbara Stanwyck is so great in this that it's really worth watching for her performance alone. I'm sort of embarrassed to say that the only other Barbara Stanwyck movie that I've seen is Double Indemnity, which is like one of my favorite movies of all time. Just a really really terrific noir
You
from
should watch
1944.
Stella Dallas because she is excellent in that as well.
Okay. Yeah, this, seeing her in this, I was like, holy crap, I need to expand my my horizons in terms of Barbara Stanwyck movies, because she is like the powerhouse at the center of the story. So the basic premise of this is she and her dad are on an ocean liner, and they play a couple of con artists, and Henry Fonda is this scientist who is also the heir to a brewing company, like a beer factory, basically. And he's like super rich, and Stanwyck and her father are trying to swindle Fonda's character out of all of his money. And so she pretends to fall in love with him, and then actually does fall for him. And then, sort of chaos ensues from there. So it's a pretty, simple concept, but I thought the execution was pretty good, except for the ending. It sort of falls apart a little bit at the end, but man, like I said, Stanwyck is just she's so piercing in Double Indemnity, and it's a completely different type of a different shade of performance. This movie is referred to as a screwball comedy. I would not say that it's in the same category as Bringing Up Baby or any of those type of like more classic screwball comedies, but you can see the DNA there a little bit. But she is just, you can't take your eyes off her, and she's very, very good. And Henry Fonda is good too. I mean, he's like always solid, and he's more of a sort of a lunk-headed like gee whiz, aw shucks type of character in this one. So The Lady Eve. It's on Criterion Channel if you want to check that out. And then finally, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the Harley Quinn animated series. I know we've talked about that show on this podcast before. I've heard very, very good things about the show for years, and I've had it in my HBO Max queue for a long time. And I finally just decided to check that out. And I've watched the first 5 episodes and love it so far. It's so funny. Jacob, I think I remember you saying when you watched it was like your favorite DC property since The Dark Knight, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it is absolutely my favorite piece of DC media since 2008, which I think says a lot.
Yeah, and I'm struggling. I mean, I've only seen the first 5 episodes, so I don't know if I could go quite that far yet, but it is certainly on that track for me. And it's just so funny. And if you've seen all of the DC movies, you don't even have to be like a huge fan of them, but if you've seen them and have like a basic knowledge of some of these characters, this show just works so well. The decisions that they make, the sort of versions of these characters, the iterations of these characters, like Commissioner Gordon shows up in the first episode, and he is just haggard as all hell and like completely losing it on the roof of the Gotham police department, and Batman has to like reel him back in during this interrogation because he's like losing his mind, and you can tell that he just lives in this heightened world at all times, and he's just this normal guy who's like completely gone insane by living in this world where supervillains are running around left and right. And it's just a very funny portrayal of Commissioner Gordon. That seems like a little bit more, I mean, as heightened and comedic as it is, it seemed actually a little bit more realistic than some of the, grim, dark versions of that character that we've seen before. So great voice work all around. Very, very funny show. Harley Quinn is streaming on HBO Max. Jacob, what have you been watching?
I watched all episodes of Haunted Latin America, the Netflix spinoff of their very trashy and incredibly enjoyable show, Haunted. I spoke about the core show on this podcast a long time ago, and it's my absolute guilty pleasure show. I love it to death. It's one of two things. It's either people gather in a room with their friends and family and tell the true story of the time they lived in a haunted house or chased by a demon or had a supernatural experience, while really, really well-made, well-shot, atmospheric, and creepy reenactments play out as they speak. So it's either that, or it's all completely scripted and everything's completely fake. But either way, I find it so entertaining and so fun to watch. And the Latin American version is what it is. It's more episodes, but filmed with people from Mexico, South America, Central America, and it has the exact same production qualities, it's the exact same tone, exact same pace to it, except it has subtitles. And season 3 of Haunted premieres next month, and I think this show is so much fun. It's on the verge of being exploitative if it is real. These people really are gathering together and sharing stories that they believe to be true, and then their traumatic experiences, whether real or imagined by them, are being recreated in like Conjuring-esque reenactments. I can't say it's all in good taste, but I will say I think this is one of the absolute best, horror supernatural reenactment shows out there. Chris, I know you've seen the core show. Have you watched the Latin American version yet?
I watched the first episode and then I haven't continued with it. But yeah, I love the original one, or the main one, whatever you want to call it. Like you, I don't know how legit it is. Like I remember in the American one, there's one episode where someone talks about like living in this like house where their father is like constantly killing people and like nothing came of it. And I was like, I don't know how real this is or not, but real or not, it's a lot of fun and really stylish. And if you like, haunted house stuff, you'll like this.
Yeah. It's strange because there's episodes like that feel like they're completely bogus. Either they're completely scripted or the person telling them is an absolute liar. But then there are other episodes where one guy shares a story of a demonic encounter while he was at a essentially held prisoner at a gay conversion prison, more or less. He's a real journalist who's told the story in other reputable outlets. So I don't know what to believe. All I know is that Haunted is extremely entertaining, and if you like horror and like your horror with a little bit of trash, I find Haunted to be an absolute blast to watch, especially as maybe you watch a real movie and then it's not quite time to go to bed yet, so make yourself a drink and watch an episode of Haunted. That's kind of been my way with this show.
And where can you watch it again, Jake?
Oh, this is a Netflix show.
Okay.
There are 2 seasons of the American one. The third one arrives mid next month, and there are 5 episodes of Haunted Latin America, which it kind of stuck up on me. It popped up, and I was. It's really fun, and somebody who enjoys, international horror. Here's international reenactment horror, so it has a different flavor to it. So it is fun.
Okay.
I also caught up late. I finally watched Promising Young Woman, a movie I've been putting off watching. I edited enough pieces about Promising Young Woman over the past 4 or 5 months that I feel like I had seen it already. So it's one of those cases where throughout our end of the year stuff, I kind of set on the sidelines as it was discussed because I hadn't seen it, other than being aware of what happens in it. I can see why it's riled people up and why people love it or hate it or fall in between. It's a movie designed to get you talking, and there's stuff in here I love, stuff in here I don't love, but as a conversation starter, I can't think of a movie that feels more primed to get people actively engaging with what they just watched than Promising Young Woman. So I'll say my wife really loved it. I just liked it. So I think maybe there's I think there's a lot of recognition for 51% of the population seeing this movie and getting more out of it. But yeah, I think Promising Woman, if you watch the Oscars and wondering why it won Best Original Screenplay, this is your chance. It's $5.99 rental on Amazon, which is where I watched it.
Jacob, like you just laid out, you had a really unique experience of watching this, whereas being that you were completely spoiled, and it feels like with the number of pieces that you edited about it, you almost knew like every aspect of the movie. So I'm just curious if there was anything about the execution or any plot stuff or any performance stuff or anything that sort of took you by surprise, given how much you knew about the movie going into it.
I think that this is the weird part of being an editor sometimes, is the pieces that I edited and the conversation I heard made me think it was a far grimmer movie than it was tonally. And there are really dark moments in it, some bleak moments, but it's often played as extreme dark comedy. And I think Emerald Fennell, the writer-director, is very aware of this, and she really leans into how absurd Carey Mulligan's revenge scheme is, and treats it as, and as one of the most elaborate, implausible, but emotionally cathartic revenge schemes imaginable. And I think being taken off guard by the tone, realizing that I think it's asking you to laugh a lot more than I think people realize, made some of the more implausible and controversial moments ring better for me in a dark comedy context as opposed to a thriller or a drama context.
Interesting. Okay. All right, Chris, let's go to you. You've watched one of my most anticipated movies of this entire year. What did you think about the movie that you watched? I'm not even going to say what it was. I'm going to wait for 5 seconds for you to
Okay.
announce what it is.
I watched The Mitchells versus the Machines, which comes to Netflix this Friday. And this movie is fucking wonderful. Oh man. The reviews are already out and they're already really ecstatic. And this is one movie where I think you can believe the hype. It's just a very funny, sweet, meticulously crafted movie where the script is incredibly tight and everything that happens in the movie is setting up something that's going to happen later. And I love scripts like that. And the animation style is just wonderful because it's like a blend of different styles, kind of somewhat similar to Into the Spider-Verse, but not quite. But this is one of those movies where the minute it was over, I was like, I want to watch that again. And we did. 2 days later, my wife and I rewatched it just because we both liked it so much. And it's just a really great movie. I can't praise this movie enough. It's funny. It's charming. It's wonderful. And so I really hope everyone checks it out when it comes to Netflix this weekend, because it's probably like one of the best things ever to be associated with Netflix in a very long time. So I know this was originally going to go to theaters, and then Sony sold it to Netflix, and their loss is Netflix gain, because this is just fantastic.
Chris, have you seen any of Gravity Falls, which is the show that Michael Rianda, one of the writers and directors, worked on before this?
No, I have not.
Okay. Has anybody here seen Gravity Falls? I feel like that show has been talked about. It has a good reputation. I've just never seen it, and I haven't really talked to anybody who's seen it, but I've seen good things about it, I think, online in general. Nobody? Okay. All right.
I'm in the same position as you, Chris. Gravity Falls is up there with Avatar: The Last Airbender, is a show that has been recommended to me more times than I can possibly imagine, and yet I just have not gotten around to it. So I guess I'll add it to my list.
Maybe we can start a podcast where I introduce you guys all to Avatar: The Last Airbender. Just kidding.
All right, Brad, let's go to you. What have you been watching?
So this is something that I actually forgot to mention on last week's water cooler, and it's not indicative of the quality of the movie because I really actually liked it a lot, and that's Nobody with Bob Odenkirk. I fall on the side with Jacob that I just really love this movie and how it fit in with like a John Wick style, but it had a different kind of world building to go along with it. I think Odenkirk is great in the role. The action is just as hard hitting as you expect and want it to be. And it's it's definitely a little more simple than I anticipated, but I didn't have a problem with that. I really enjoyed how breezy and hard hitting it was, and just everything that it brought to the table, including Christopher Lloyd coming in and having a fun part to play as Bob Odenkirk's character's dad. Just a good action flick, and something that I watched this on VOD. I didn't go to the theater to see it because I wasn't past my full vaccination yet, but it's something that I maybe I'll go out of my way to see in theaters just to throw some support behind it, because it's one of those movies that is worth checking out on the big screen, and it would be a fun return if you haven't been back to theaters yet and you're getting on the verge of being able to do that. So yeah, Nobody, it's good.
Okay, what else, Brad?
I just watched this special that aired on ABC a day or two ago. It's called 50 Years of Sunny Days. And it's this hour and a half. Basically, it's like a news special, but it plays like a documentary about Sesame Street and just the 50 years that it's been on the air. And I was worried that this might be something that kind of tread the same territory as Street Gang, How We Got to Sesame Street, the documentary that played Sundance earlier this year. But it chronicles Sesame Street in a much different way. Whereas Street Gang looks at the origins and history of Sesame Street as to how it all came together and the talents behind it, and the development and creation of certain things, and just how it became the show that it is. This 50 Years of Sunny Days special actually digs into the impact that Sesame Street has had on families and society, and like what their goal is of trying to help educate kids and have the difficult conversations with them that sometimes parents don't even want to have, and can be hard to address in other programming because they're, worried more about ratings and selling toys and lunchboxes and all that stuff. And so it covers a wide swath of the various things that Sesame Street has done to be progressive and introduce kids and families to, concepts and things that they otherwise might not find in other shows. Yeah, it ventures to South Africa, where it covers the version of Sesame Street down there called Takalani Sesame, and talks about the Muppet that was created to address the AIDS crisis. It talks to various families of different ethnicities and social backgrounds about what certain characters mean to them and how important they are, and how it helped them through tough times, and help their kids, understand things and like feel like they weren't alone. And it's one of the things that goes, just to further hit the idea of like, it's very important for people of all walks of life and backgrounds to see themselves represented in media, and how important it is to make them feel less alone and know that, they're not forgotten and they're not marginalized, that they're just as important as everybody else is. And of course, it's about Sesame Street, which, pretty much everybody has grown up and experienced at some point in their life. And so there's great vintage clips and just fascinating insights about it. And so I'm not aware of where it's streaming, because it aired on ABC and I recorded it through my DVR on YouTube TV. But since it's ABC, I wouldn't be surprised if it's on Hulu, or at the very least streaming through the ABC app or something like that.
Okay.
So I would try and seek it out. It's called 50 Years of Sunny Days, and it's very, very good.
Man, Sesame Street, what a show, right? Like, is there anybody on Earth who hates Sesame Street? Like, I can't imagine that. It's
Republicans.
I was about to say, haven't conservatives tried to get it canceled several times?
Yeah, there's
geez.
actually a segment about how like there's certain clips from like Bill O'Reilly's show and stuff like that where they're talking about, it's like, stop trying to take our innocence away from our childhood and have these serious conversations with them. Just let them have fun. It's like,
Give me a break.
Get fucked.
Oh boy. All right. Well, HC, what have you been watching?
I have been watching, or really obsessed with, Shadow and Bone, which is the new fantasy series from Netflix, developed by Eric Heiserer, the writer behind Arrival and Netflix's Bird Box, and based on the Grishaverse novels by Lee Bardugo. And this is a show that has been on my radar for the not on my radar, but I've been kind of aware of it the past couple of weeks, because a lot of people I follow are really excited about this adaptation of this YA fantasy series. And I kind of rolled my eyes at that, because YA fantasy, I felt like, has been in a big rut ever since the heyday of the Hunger Games and Twilight. Even then, I wasn't really a big fan of those series. I remember reading the Hunger Games books, and while liking the story, I thought the writing was a little bit juvenile. And so I have my own mixed feelings about the YA genre, and how a lot of authors kind of lazily reuse the formula in a way that I think both underestimates its audience and kind of patronizes them in some ways. So I kind of popped this on sort of on a whim. I heard a lot of good things from people who I trusted. And I also had like an hour to spare, like on a Saturday night, because probably too much information, but I like late night showers, and I was waiting for my hair to dry, and I was like, I'll just watch an episode of Shadow and Bone. And I end up, it was like 11:45 at night, and like half an hour in, I sat up and was like, oh no, because I could feel the obsession setting in. And before I knew it, it was like 2 a.m. and I'd watched like 2 episodes. And so this is a series that is set in this fantasy world that is vaguely inspired by sort of Tsarist Russia, as well as other countries around that area. There's this country called Ravka, which is the center of it, and there's also bordering nations that are based off of I think one is like East Asian countries and another is Finland. And it's in this fantasy world, this country is divided in two by this swath of darkness called the Fold, which houses all kinds of ravenous man-eating creatures that attack anyone that tries to cross the Fold. And this is a huge problem for this country because they are on war from either side, and whenever they try to cross the other side, they're attacked, beset upon by these creatures. And in this country, this is a subset of people who basically use magic called Grisha, who are able to like fight these monsters, and they have like various powers, like fire, whatever. And they're led by this general played by Ben Barnes, who is at his swoony best in this series, and is basically the epitome of if evil, why so sexy? So at the center of this story is this young orphan who is half Shuhan, basically half Chinese, and is like steamed an outsider, and discovers that she is this mythic sun summoner who has the ability to summon the sun, and basically is prophesied to bring down the fold and save the world, blah, blah, chosen one arc. But despite all the familiar elements of YA that this series has, the chosen one arc, the love triangle, the a division of people based off of sort of personality traits / powers, it's really, really, really good. And it handles these elements in a way that feel exciting and new and fresh. It doesn't feel like a lazy trope that they're falling back on. And it's essentially because the world that this show is in is so rich, and it kind of just throws you into the deep end. It doesn't really explain to you too much apart from like exposition at the beginning, and I really appreciate that. And the characters are a lot of fun, because not only do we have the central protagonist, there's several other ones that is sort of like this found family unit that immediately has stolen my heart. And it's 99% people pining, 1% kissing, a found family trio centered around a mean, spiteful man, and a lots of maps. I don't know. I really love high fantasy maps. I've talked about this before, but every time they talk about like the wars to the west and the north, I'm like, ooh, I want to see a map of this, and it's really exciting to me. So I have been obsessed with this show, and unfortunately I've been very busy this week, so I haven't been able to binge through all 8 episodes as I would have liked to. I've only gotten through episode 6 so far, but I have been just kind of obsessively reading up about it and watching it, and just kind of returning even to Tumblr just to sate my love for this show. I'm really excited about it, and I'm kind of amazed that I never caught on to the books, which I'm probably going to be buying now. But yeah, I would say I would recommend this even for people who don't enjoy YA, because of just the really fun, really rich characters, the rich world that we have, and the way that it has all these familiar elements but doesn't take itself so seriously, doesn't try to be like the next Game of Thrones like so many fantasy shows are nowadays, and it just has fun with it. That's what I really like about it. So if you really like pining and maps like me in fantasy, I really recommend Shadow and Bone, streaming now on Netflix.
So first thing, it sounds like the kissing percentage needs to go up a lot. 1% HT? Come on.
I know, there's not a
that.
lot of kissing. I'm 6 episodes in. There's like 2 kiss scenes, and I was like, wow, I'm surprised about this. But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And then the other question I have for you, or the question I have for you, is I saw that Joanna Robinson of Vanity Fair said that like it takes maybe 2 episodes to really get into this. I'm just curious if that was your experience as well. She seemed to think that there was like a barrier of entry a little bit.
I was into it pretty soon. Like it was basically a part that really maybe would only specifically appeal to me. It was when these characters were talking about, again, geography and like these various sort of criminal syndicates that were happening here, that I was like, this is almost too complicated. I love it. And so that got me interested, I guess. So I don't know if that would be something that people would be in, but it was something that sort of caught my attention. And I thought, this is a show that isn't either talking down to its audience or trying to be something that it's not.
Awesome. So that's Shadow and Bone. What else have you been watching, HT?
Another thing that I watched on Netflix that came somewhat highly recommended for people that I trust and whose taste I usually align with, but I did not like, is Ride or Die, which is a Japanese film directed by Ryuichi Hiroki. And it's basically this I kind of put this on based on a sort of rave review from David Ehrlich, who's opinions I usually agree with, but and like about an hour into this film, which is like a 2.5 hour film, way too long for what it is, I was like, okay, I can see why he likes it. It's about these two murder lesbians who go on the road, Thelma and Louise style, interwoven with this nostalgic slice of life story, coming of age story of when they first met in high school. And I could very much see why he liked it. It's kind of that psychological thriller slash road drama slash coming of age romance. But after that first half hour, which I was intrigued by, I found myself really, really getting disappointed in this movie and starting to find it hard to fathom how he could enjoy this movie so much. The characters are thin, the plot is meandering in a way that I'm sure is intentional, but felt to me like it was just completely just interminable in a way that I just did not find entertaining to watch, with the occasional graphic sex scene and the romance at the center of it. To call it toxic is generous. It's just a film that I found myself enjoying less and less as I watched on, and also a movie that is very clearly directed by a man. There's just some sex scenes that I found to be not even like gratuitous, but just unrealistic in a way that felt like very much like that sort of male director approach to it. And I found myself it almost made me lose my estimation of Ehrlich and his taste. I was like, wow, I kind of not, I'm disappointed in people who really like this film. And usually they don't talk about movies that I disliked on this podcast, but this was just one of those instances where I found myself really disappointed despite anticipating liking it a lot. And so I don't recommend watching Ride or Die on Netflix.
All right. Do you have better luck with the other two things?
I did have better luck. So Cliff Walkers, I got to watch, which is coming out this Friday in theaters. And that is the new film by Zhang Yimou, who is the director behind such wuxia films such as House of Flying Daggers and Hero. And this is his first foray into the spy genre. It's a film set in the puppet state of Manchukuo in the 1930s, and it follows these four communist special agents who return to China after being trained in the USSR and go on a secret mission to rescue either a war hero or another spy, a fellow agent, but they find themselves surrounded by double agents and dealing with a traitor in their midst. And it's this real, sturdy, handsomely shot espionage film that is good. It's good. It's not, I wouldn't say it's like it really blew me away. I liked it more than I loved it, but I would say that it's very handsomely directed film, very confidently directed film, despite this being Zhang's first foray into the spy genre. But yeah, solid spy movie that is really beautiful. It's set in like this sort of very snowy, moody atmosphere, which adds to the entire paranoid Cold War thriller thing. I guess it's not Cold War since the 1930s, but it has that sort of atmosphere. So that's Cliff Walkers, which is going to hit theaters this Friday.
Cool. And then what else?
And lastly, I watched Pulse for the first time, the Japanese horror film directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. And I'd heard a lot of good things about this. This is a movie that I hadn't checked out before because I am a big scaredy cat, especially of ghosts. And the first half hour of this is top tier Japanese techno horror ghost film. It's really that creeping dread that is a typical style of a lot of that early 2000s Japanese horror. Like Ringu, for example, it had that kind of grungy feel to it too, as well as mostly being about the dread and the suspense versus actual horror. But the imagery is fantastic, and I was so fascinated by the ghost scenes in this, in which it forgoes jump scares in favor of something much more slow and chilling and creeping. And there's one major scene with a ghost that could have been laughable if it weren't so terrifying. It was a fascinating way to shoot a ghost scene, because it's just this woman that was slowly walking up towards a man who was cowering in a corner and doing all of these sort of strange loose movements that could have looked very silly, but just was abjectly terrifying in a way that felt inhuman and eerie and unnatural. So that was really effective. Latter half was weird, and I want to know what Chris thinks about this, because I think he wrote about Pulse recently in his streaming column. Is the ending of Pulse kind of weird?
I mean, first of all, I love this movie. It's one of my favorite horror movies. It's weird in the sense that the movie starts off being one thing and then turns into something completely different. But I love all of it. I just love how it's a very like lonely movie. It's a very it felt like the perfect, like, even though it's obviously made before that, it feels like the perfect pandemic era horror movie, just because it's just this very lonely, spaced out movie where people are like trapped in their own little worlds. And I do think the second half is a lot different than the first half, but I love this movie just so much. It's just so creepy and sad and different. And there's also a remake with Kristen Bell, and it's terrible, so don't watch that.
Yeah, this is definitely the most effective depiction of the horrors of internet and its isolating qualities that I've ever seen, I think. Even more so than more recent sort of sleeker films. I think this one really digs into, like Chris said, the isolation and loneliness of it. So that I really admired, even if I was very confused by the latter half. I think I'll come around to it. It was a very different movie, like Chris said.
That's pretty impressive considering this movie is 20 years old now.
Mm-hmm.
So that says a lot. Okay, let's get into what we've been eating. Brad, what have you been eating recently?
So before, I've talked about a bunch of the different Cocoa Pebbles and Fruity Pebbles things that have been coming out, because it's like the 50th anniversary of both cereals this year. And so in honor of that celebration, Post has also come out with Birthday Cake Pebbles, a new cereal that is flavored like the generic birthday cake flavor. And I think I've talked about before about how I'm generally somewhat leery of the generic birthday cake flavor, because usually it's just very sugary and doesn't necessarily have like much of a defined flavor, I guess. And in this case, I actually really liked this cereal because it tasted exactly like what I wanted the Funfetti cereal to taste like. It actually has like a Funfetti frosting kind of flavor to it, and Funfetti to me, like that's kind of like, I think what the general birthday cake flavor should be, is something along those lines. And it's just a very good. It's definitely a sugary sweet cereal, but it's that Funfetti style flavoring that really made it stand out to me. So I really liked it, and you should be able to find it at a bunch of different grocery stores right now. I also tried Skittles and Gummies, the fruit candy, and they've just turned it into basically just like fruit snacks, and it feels kind of like just a cheap cash-in, which obviously they got me, but because they don't really taste like Skittles, they just taste like vaguely different flavored gummies. They have the regular version with all the traditional flavors, and then they have a wild berry version, and they're good as far as being gummies. They're better than a decent chunk of the normal like gummy bears or gummy worms and stuff that are out there. But there's really not much to them, except that they are rounded half circles with an S on them that they kind of look like Skittles that have been turned into gummies. So whatever, I guess. And then Twizzlers came out with a new mystery flavor, and I got a packet of that, and I actually took it to the LAN party so that everyone there could try it if they wanted to. And from my best guess is, it seems like it's just a grape Twizzler. Maybe more specifically, like maybe it could be a grape jelly twister. I don't know. Twizzler. But it's the Twizzler itself. It has what appears to be a purple color, and the flavor does seem like it's like a grape at least a vaguely grape flavor. So I feel like it's always tough to tell with licorice, because even the like other flavors of licorice that there are out there, like whether it's pull and peel watermelon or some of the other like ones that have fillings and stuff like that, the flavor in the licorice isn't particularly strong. And that was the case with this mystery flavor too. So like, even though it did have a grape flavor, it wasn't overwhelming. So if it came out that they were grape and they were regular, I'm not necessarily sure I would go out of my way to get them again, because they were just fine, but whatever. And then there are some Eggo Waffles cereals that are out on shelves. There's a regular version, there's a blueberry waffles version, and there's a chocolate waffles version. And
I was going to ask what the point is of eating cereal that tastes like Eggo waffles, but I guess I could theoretically ask that about almost 90% of the stuff that you talk about in this category. So I'll just leave it at that.
No, for sure. And like, I got this because I was hoping that it would be something along the lines of Waffle Crisp, which hasn't been around for a while. Even though I did hear recently that it's back, but only in like the giant Malta meal bags, and I think only like at certain locations. And it's not quite as good as Waffle Crisp. It doesn't have quite the same like crunch to it, and then the maple syrup waffle flavor isn't quite as prominent. It wasn't too dissimilar from honeycomb, and that includes the shape of the cereal as well. But it was okay. I didn't get the blueberry one because I'm not really necessarily a blueberry waffles fan anyway, and so I just didn't feel like that. But I did get the chocolate one. And the chocolate waffles one doesn't really taste anything like chocolate waffles, but it's a solid cocoa cereal along the lines of like a Cocoa Puffs, just in a different shape, I guess, and a slightly varying intensity of chocolate flavor. So out of all of them, I would say that the least traditional flavor, the chocolate waffles one, was the best one. But again, not necessarily like one that I'm gonna like go out of my way to get another box of anytime soon.
Okay. All right. I think that's going to bring us to the end of today's episode of Slash Film Daily. This podcast is published every weekday, bringing you the most exciting news from the world of movies and TV, as well as deeper dives into the great features you can find on the site. You can subscribe to the show on Apple, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps, and send your feedback, questions, comments, concerns, and mailbag topics to us at peter@slashfilm.com. Make sure to leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention your email on the air. Don't forget to rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends, spread the word. Thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you tomorrow.
Hey, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
You have a choice to make today.
Okay.
I have in front of me the gargantuan book of insult, offense, and effrontery, sharp retort, riposte, caustic quips, imply put downs by Louis A. Safian, the old standby, the old classic.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been doing research and trying to figure out who is the modern heir to the Louis A. Safian throne. So I've found a website, news24.com/u/archive/really mean insults. So my question is, do you want me to read from Gargantuan Book of Insult, Offense, and Effrontery, or from news24.com/u/archive/really mean insults?
Well, you did the work, Jacob, so let's just go ahead and go from the weird website one.
All right. I promise you, this is called Really Mean Insults by a writer only known as Admin. Ben, don't feel bad. There are many people who have no talent.
Oh, man, cutting straight to the bone.
Brad, I'd like to kick you in the teeth, but why should I improve your looks?
Shit.
HT, brains aren't everything. In fact, in your case, they're nothing.
Aww.
And Chris, I like you. People say I have no taste, but I like you.
Oh, I feel like that one wasn't that bad. I'll take
Fine,
that.
okay, fine. Any similarity between you and a human is purely coincidental.
Wow.
That's pretty bad.
Oh, gee.
What a 180 that one is.
So I guess my question, guys, is who do we prefer? Do we prefer Louis A. Safian or Admin?
I don't know. Admin. I kind of like that Admin just cuts to the chase. There's no bullshit with the writer known as Admin.
Yeah, he's just raw. He takes the gloves off and he just really like tells you what a piece of shit
Just wants
you
to
are.
kick people in the teeth.
So I guess we're looking at here is the evolution of insult writing. I mean, Louis Safian is very classical. He's very restrained and flowery, whereas Admin is all about he's the Ernest Hemingway of insult writing. He takes away all the glamour. It's down to the bone.
Yeah, perfect
The next
comparison.
Ernest Hemingway, that is admin.
So Louis Sapien is to Charles Dickens. This admin is to Ernest Hemingway. Do you all agree on this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have to.
I think we learned a very valuable lesson here today, ladies and gentlemen.